The tag team title match was up first, and until I saw the interview with Jericho and MJF about midway through and realized they've done this on purpose, I thought these people are absolutely insane. They have done this completely backwards. And I said, there's no way when I saw this match, I said, there's no way you can't tell me that they're going to waste actually the angle of juicing Papa Buck and then just bury this whole program in the first match. But then I realized that the whole program was this first and last match. They're not going to do this again. In which case they did waste juicing Papa Buck for a one-off match to fucking, oh my God. It was MJF and Jericho against the Dumb Fucks. That's their new name now. Balding Dumb Fuck and Pie-Face Dumb Fuck. I know YouTube will love that, as well as you and Sharknado. So after the rotten angle that they did, and I know it wasn't believable, and his selling and acting, as the kids say, was abysmal, and nobody believed it, but even just to take up for it in story, after that, they just walk to the ring. Pie-Face jumps out and kisses his wife. They do the in-ring intros with the maitre d' of Daly's Place, Justin Roberts. Table near the front, please. It was the most blasé entrance to, you guys just hospitalized our father, that I've ever seen in wrestling. Wasn't it you?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that incisive commentary. What about this? What about if in any other territory in wrestling, the babyface team had their father attacked by the heels? The heels would come to the ring first. The babyface's music would play. The heels would be ready to looking down the aisleway. The babyfaces would cross them up, and they'd come in from the front door and jump in behind the heels. Of course, that's if all this stuff wasn't overdone for no reason every week on TV anyway. They would spin them around, bing, bing, bing. They'd start a four-way, couple of backdrops, couple of drop kicks. They'd spill out to both sides of the floor. One of the heels would get posted and get color right away. He's bleeding. They'd fucking rattle a couple of chairs around. They'd roll in the ring, and fucking the baby faces would kick the heels' asses for 3 or 4 minutes. First one at the time, and then both at the time, and then they'd pay it off again and do it again, and then the fucking heels would take over with a heat spot behind the referee's back. And they'd get heat on one baby face until it was just time to make the fucking hot tag, which he would, and the other baby face would make a comeback. Boom, boom, boom. Juice the second fucking heel, and as they're about to fucking win, the babyface get one good strong false finish, and then the manager or someone else or one of the heels pulls out a gimmick or does some kind of double fuck. Boom, put the fucking belts on the heels. They're fucking staggering out, bleeding with the belts, and the babyfaces still want revenge. You can get 2 or 3 rematches with building stipulations out of something like that, and the whole thing goes 12 minutes. And it's chaos in an orchestrated way. Or you can come out here and just like they did, the dumb fucks, they leg dived the heels and rained false fake punches near their heads. And then immediately rolled out to the floor for a sloppy fight with no bumps, and then did a staged double dive spot. And in this match especially, it took forever to start going anywhere, but none of the kicks or strikes had life or oomph. They were walking through it. Pie-Face and Balding did all their same double team shit they always do. The match did make more sense than most of the Bucks matches because Jericho wasn't going to do a bunch of gymnastics, and MJF and Jericho are both actually heels that can work, but there was no life to this. It just... Jericho and MJF, by the way, nailed the flapjack perfect, boys. Thank you for taking my advice. They were right in the right place where they should have been, positioned evenly and correctly. Pieface, at one point after they got heat on Balding, Pieface gets a tag and makes a stupid comeback that he obviously called, where he made a fucking comeback where MJF only took one bump somehow. He hit him a bunch of times, but he only took one bump. And then did you see Pieface runs across the ring to hit the ropes, but Wardlow grabs the middle rope and pulls it down like 3 inches, and Jackson just flings himself through the ropes like that would have made any difference whatsoever, and he dove head first through him. And then they got heat on Pieface. And remember when this whole fiasco of a promotion started, everybody liked referee Aubrey. She was so official and she didn't get buried and she had credibility. They're just treating her like every single one of these wet fucking dish rags. Jericho and MJF went for another flapjack, and Jericho, anybody that still has this thing on their DVR, possibly as evidence in a later civil suit, go back and watch. Jericho had just tagged in, and he just has to grab the guy and call a spot and tags MJF back in. They're going for the other flapjack that Pieface can turn into a double DDT spot, and Jericho tells Pieface a bedtime story in his ear. All it needed to be was double DDT us. Jesus, he was down there for a day and a half. I think it's because he's gassed, and this was fairly sloppy. I think it's because Chris was gassed. So he double DDTs both Jericho and MJF, and then he's already in the middle of the ring, Pieface. And instead of being disoriented and going to a neutral corner, instead of the heels starting to get up to their feet and closing in on him, the heels just laid there, and Pieface just rolled over and tagged his brother. And neither heel tried to stop him. Baldo made a comeback, same shit as always. MJF took a great bump on the Canadian Destroyer, but it's still a completely ridiculous move. And then they hit another false finish, a double team false finish on MJF. He kicked out again, so he kicked out of the Canadian Destroyer, then he kicks out of a double team. They're making the heels stronger than they are by hitting all these fucking moves. This psychology is so backwards with these people. Then Matt threw more fake punches. Is it a thing now? Have they just decided that if the guy on the ground just covers up his head, that you can just beat the shit out of his forearms and act like you're punching him? And we don't care anymore that that's what it is?
I don't know.
Is that did we get the memo on that?
I guess so.
The dumb fucks went for the Meltzer driver on Jericho, but MJF grabbed Balding's foot, and Jericho reversed Pieface and tombstoned him. And as soon as he stood up from tombstoning the guy, Balding was back up on the apron and springboard flipped off the apron, off the top rope, into the ring, and landed on his ass right in front of Chris Jericho, who was just staring at him. What was that supposed to be?
I don't know. I watched that and I said, man, I wish I had this on my DVR so I could just rewind it and see this again. I don't know what that was supposed to be. Bad timing.
Jericho immediately got the lion tamer, and I've only been in and around the business for 46 years. But the only thing I could figure out was, and it's insane if they were going for this because it wouldn't work, and guess what? It didn't work. I guess they thought that Jericho could catch the guy's legs for the lion tamer when he flipped over the top and flipped toward Jericho. But no, you couldn't, because his legs were going so fast and Jericho's just standing there looking at him, boom, and it was done. It was like Bubba saying, Jimmy, you fell so fast. And anyway, Jericho gets a lion tamer, and then Balding Buck in the lion tamer just tags Pieface. So Jericho gets Pieface in the lion tamer. The heels are out wrestling the baby faces in this grudge match where the baby faces, or the heels, bloodied and sodomized the baby face's father. Then MJF was gone for a while, for minutes, while Jericho did stuff with one of them. Then Jericho crotched himself in the buckle. But he was going for the bulldog or whatever, and they were supposed to push him up, but he just crotched himself in the buckle, and MJF is suddenly back there and tags himself in, and now Balding Buck is invisible and gone. And then it slows to a snail's pace as MJF taunts the little pie face on the ground, which you know is going to backfire on him, but it went so long. Jericho's on the floor laying there blown up. Then finally, the Bucks, of course, come back on MJF and go for the Meltzer driver, but Jericho foils it. MJF rolls Pie Face up, gets a 2 count. Jericho hits Pie Face with a baseball bat. And then, which, by the way, boy, when I was a kid and you got hit with a baseball bat, it fucking hurt, whether it was at a wrestling match or at a fight or at a fucking playground or whatever. But they ain't making these bats like, they ought to be getting these bats from Louisville. These ain't Louisville sluggers because these bats don't hurt anybody. Jericho hits this 5'8", 190-pound, middle-aged middle schooler with a baseball bat, and MJF then immediately hits his finish and gets a 2 count. And this would not end. It kept going. And then finally, Jericho hit Wardlow by accident with the Judas effect. But since they were in a replay of another one of these preposterous false finishes, they missed most of it with the camera. Then they did a spot where the dumb fucks, MJF stood there and took and got ping-ponged by 10 super kicks. 4 from each guy and then a double until he took 1 bump. This is what they're doing with the people that injured and hospitalized their father. They're doing Three Stooges comedy. And then finally they hit a shitty Meltzer driver on Jericho, who probably wasn't anxious to take that fucking thing anyway. 1, 2, 3. As I said, it's the exact opposite of what the match and result should have been if this was the start of a program that was being instituted, that was called for by such a heinous angle. But it's not the wrong result, since this will be the last match in the program, but it still was the exact opposite of what the match really ought to have fucking been. And there was almost 25 minutes of this. And this was abysmal and had the stench of grisly death upon it. What'd you think, Brian?
Well, first of all, did you see the interview with the Bucks that was part of like the package to show what led to the match?
No, because I'd already seen all that I cared to see.
It's too bad that Nick Jackson can't talk, because they need someone other than Matt Jackson who just comes across like a little bitch, just like a little brat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching that. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, he's the babyface? We're supposed to sympathize with him here?
Well, but wait, actually, he's appealing to his audience. A bunch of overaged, under-mentally and physically developed, whiny, basement-dwelling bitches identify with their own kind.
As far as the match goes, you know, it was all right as far as a Young Bucks match goes. I don't like those matches where it's just spot, 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 near fall, a bunch of flips, and someone's going to say, oh, come on, there's so much deep storytelling in these matches. No, it's the same shit every time. I don't like it, but there are lots of Young Buck fans who do, you know, the buckaroos. Lots of buckaroos who really like this. But it doesn't do it for me, and to your earlier point, and to my overall point for a while now about Tony Khan doesn't know what he's doing as a booker. Their dad, and we could talk about the fact he's a douchebag in real life, but we're not even talking about that. On air, on camera. We met the guy the week before. He put his hands on Jericho.
We didn't actually even meet him. We just saw him in the parking lot. We just saw him there. And hanging around.
Wearing the Disco Inferno shirt.
Yeah.
He put his hands on Jericho. So the next week, Jericho and MJF beat him up. He's in like a trance. He doesn't know how to sell. There's blood seemingly all over his hands. And on his face and just random spots.
He had, wait a minute. He's religious. What do they call that? Stigmata? He started bleeding from his palm.
I don't know what. I don't know what happened to the man.
The spirit compelled him.
But obviously, this attack upset the Bucks enough that they jogged to the back to find him. And it upset them enough that one of them went in an ambulance with him. I hope he didn't disappear out of the ambulance. That tends to happen in AEW. And then they had a match against a team that doesn't look like they're going to be a team much longer. I mean, we'll see. And they won the match. They got revenge on the show before where they beat up the other members of the Inner Circle. This whole thing has been booked horribly. It was booked almost as if it was only booked to make the Bucks strong.
Oh, you don't say.
But what a waste. Imagine if, again, take the real-life personalities and thoughts of Matt and Nick Massey out of the equation. And just a tag team called the Young Bucks. And as a tag team called FTR. And everyone's been talking for years about who's the better tag team, who's this and that. I'm using FTR as an example here. And this team that you could have a long-term feud with beats up their dad. Remember, it was a big deal in San Francisco when Bob Roop went after Sullivan's dad. That, was the last big boost of business for Roy Shire. If someone's parents...
It's a strong, heinous angle. But what the example you were just given, if it had been done with FTR, but you know what, it would have been wasted too, because that program would have been cut off and disappear as well, because they capitalize on nothing. They blow everything. They fucking throw it out there like shit on a plate with plenty of forethought in their minds. They're just, unfortunately, very small minds that don't think well. So they think they're putting a lot of thought into this, but their thinning is pretty thin, and then it's gone, and then there's no interest in it because of the bad finishes and the improper builds. Wasted. Wasted.